Welcome back to another video on my channel, and today I'm going to be talking to you guys about pink horror. Woo! I have a pink sweater on just to be able to talk about my favorite new subgenre of horror. So some of you guys might be like, Cassidy, what the heck is pink horror? Pink horror is this term that I kind of found out about mostly because um, some of my readers have been using that to describe some of my work, especially my short stories. Um, and I didn't know what the heck they were talking about at first. But after doing some digging, I have to say that I absolutely love this genre, and I think it does fit my work pretty well. So basically, pink horror is how I would define it as stories about feminine presenting people written by feminine presenting people for feminine presenting people. I say feminine presenting because I know pink is associated with women, and a lot of these stories are focused around women and the female experience, but I think they should also choose, they can also represent gender diverse folks as well, or anybody who resonates with having a more feminine energy or feminine experience, right? Or it's very involved with queerness as well, in my opinion. So how does that make it different from normal horror? Well, in pink horror, also they kind of use a pink motif as well. Most of the things that fall under pink horror do. I guess it's not a requirement, but I feel like the color is a big identifier for what is and isn't pink horror. So yeah, so what's it different? How is it different from normal horror? One, aesthetically it's different, right? Like horror is traditionally like red and black and blood and guts and yeah, it's super scary. Um, whereas pink horror aesthetically is more of like the terror involving the feminine experience, right? Or it's using pink, which is traditionally meant to be like a color of innocence and friendship and just like these softer archetypes of womanhood, and then it's using that to flip it on its head to show that like how scary it is to be a girl, right? So some movies that kind of tackle these themes are one, my favorite movie, Jennifer's Body. Love that movie. And you can kind of, even though it doesn't just use the color pink, you have the iconic picture of Megan Fox's character with her pink sweater and hearts. She's a high school girl. She's supposed to represent like, you know, women becoming their own sexuality, coming into their own sexuality. But it's also like her experience with her body and choosing to use it instead of being used by men. Love that movie. I think if you want to tip your toes into pink horror, that's the first one you should start with. And then another. Oh, and it's important to know too that Jennifer's Body was written by somebody who has had experience themselves with like sex work. So they have a very strong relationship to sexuality and their own body as well. Similarly, there's this movie called Cam, and I think it's on Netflix. But Cam is also written by somebody who is or was a professional cam girl, somebody else who works in sex work. And Cam is the story of this young woman who has like an OnlyFans type of career. She produces this sort of content on the internet, and she's very proud of what she does, and she's trying to up her ranking on the website. And things start to go scary because there is some sort of online entity or evil entity that is taking over her persona and posting things of her that she never even recorded. And it's very spooky. There is like there's like blood and stuff, but again, it's nothing too crazy. But it's another, and again, they use pink, like her whole setup for her cam sessions is like pink. It is again about sexuality and like the dangers of sex work, but not demonizing sex work as a profession, which I feel like is great. And because I know that sometimes it can go the other way where it's just sex work itself is scary. Not necessarily, but it's like the other factors that come into that make it scary. I loved this movie. I thought it was great. Likewise, I haven't seen this yet. It's on my list. But something similar is a movie called Promising Young Woman. Sorry, there was a school bus. Anyway, yeah, there's a movie that's similar called Promising Young Woman. This came out fairly recently. I haven't seen it yet, but again, it's a story about how I think her name's Cassie. The main character basically is seeking revenge or going after people um, who have wronged her friend. Her friend experienced a sexual assault in college, and nobody really did anything for her. And the person who was the perpetrator kind of just like got away with the situation. So this person takes it upon herself to pose as like an innocent, like drunk girl at a club or whatever, and to see which even the nice guys who are willing to like take advantage, try to bring her home and like take advantage of her. Turns out she's not drunk, and then she just like starts killing people. Um, but yeah, it's basically a critique of how we treat victims of sexual assault and the lack of support they have and the lack of consequences for these sorts of perpetrators. If you want to watch a pink horror movie that isn't heavy on messaging like that, I would recommend a movie that I watched recently. It's a little bit harder to find. Um, I think I bought it on Amazon Prime, but it's called Sissy. If you just want like a slasher type movie that doesn't seem like a slasher movie at first, so oops, I spoiled it. But anyway, if you want something like that, please watch Sissy. I think this falls under pink horror. I mean, the movie poster itself is lends to that, but it's a very queer movie. Sissy is basically like a social media influencer, who her shtick is all about like mental health awareness and positivity and meditation and like breathing and stuff. But she runs into a old childhood friend at a pharmacy, and the childhood friend invites her to her bachelorette party, and things all go crazy from there. There's beef between Sissy and some of the other people at the bachelorette party, and it all goes down in a way that you don't think is going to go down. And I just loved it. It was so much fun. It was a lot of twists and turns. I don't know. It was fun, and it's set in Australia, so international films. What? Yeah. So Sissy's great. If you want like book recommendations, I think the best book to start off with pink horror would be Bunny. Oh my god. Now, this is a bizarre book, but I love it. I love Bunny. I read this, I think, in the span of like a day and night. But it was just perfect. So Bunny is a story about like the main character. She is a graduate student in a creative writing program or a literature program or whatever. And part of her program, there are workshops. You know, you go if you're in any sort of art in school, you get weekly critiques. So she participates in one of those critiques, and there are a group of girls in her cohort that call themselves Bunny. Like they all refer to each other as Bunny, and they are just like obsessed with each other. Very like Mean Girls clicky, but not in a Mean Girls way. I don't want to spoil it too much because this book is kind of trippy. But basically, the main character starts to get adopted by their friend group, really, and they do like private workshops at their house slash dorm or whatever. And again, if you don't want too much spoilers, just pause right now. And if you want me to keep going, I'll just say it. They need the main character's viewpoint and inspiration to help them conjure up characters with their little like weird seance thing. Again, I don't want to get into too much. There is sexual content in this book, just warning. I don't know if people like that or not, but there's some sexual content here. There's like a blurring of like what's real and what's not real. It's basically if Mean Girls met like some sort of grown up like Alice in Wonderland maybe type situation. Yeah, it's very bizarre, but I love this book. And of course, this version comes in pink. Not all versions come in pink, but it reminds me of like that Mean Girls-esque type vibe, which I think is very popular if you want to do like pink horror in general. I think that's a common trope within pink horror. Just a selfish plug. So this is my short story collection. I think this would fall into pink horror. I purposely designed this cover to be pink and teal. Because I thought that fit the overall theming of this collection more. So this is a short story collection that's all about the toys and tech of the early 2000s, which is like my childhood. And so a lot of this is from the perspective of a girl. Um, so this could be like a middle school girl, or like even it has some stories have adults in them, but some also have like high schoolers and stuff. But it's a very, very, very feminine perspective of somebody who grew up at this time where there was like this weird like mystery about the internet, like creepy pastas or just like creepy toys like Furbies. People who have like, you think parasocial relationships are bad. Let me tell you about like Tamagotchis, and the minute you would like leave them alone, they would end up dying. So they had this like codependent relationship to Tamagotchis and stuff. I wrote about a bunch of that in here. If you want to check it out, but again, I wanted this to be from the perspective of like feeling like you're at a sleepover, right? Which again, I think is very much part of the femme experience. So I think that technically counts too as pink horror. Pink horror is definitely not like a brand new genre. I feel like it's something that's been emerging for some time, but now people are starting to label it and use it as part of their branding too. Because we have black horror, or you know, for people who want to write stories around the black experience, I feel like that's been exploding, especially after Get Out. And people are starting to write more about like horror from the perspective of different minority groups. The one book I'm reading right now is called Never Whistle at Night, and I think I've showed it to you guys on here, but that is all short stories about like written by people of indigenous descent, and about like their experiences or their stories being a native person, or you know, uh, or just like stories from their culture too. And since that's been going on, like with people posting about their stories racially, I think it's not unexpected for people to start writing horror based on sex and gender. And I know that there's been some retellings of that in the past, like Rosemary's Baby, I think is because that's like a kind of like a scary pregnancy type thing. But also Silence of the Lambs, I do like that movie a lot. It's one of my favorite movies. Um, that is about like a big heavy theme in Silence of the Lambs is like flesh and reducing women to one's flesh, and like constantly being observed and watched and mulled over by the male gaze. Um, but again, those are things that were written by men, and they portray that experience, and it is very compelling and telling for a lot of folks, including myself, who are femme presenting. But I feel like with pink horror, it's a different type of vibe and a different type of attitude, um, and it kind of reminds me of the same sort of effect that the Barbie movie had on folks. That it was talking about like universal experiences that women and femmes have, like being like having a man play the guitar at you on a date or whatever, which I didn't think was like such a universal experience, but it is. But the whole part of Barbie was like talking about how the loss and the highs and lows of like transitioning from a girl to a woman, and kind of like losing really strong relationships with young boys, especially like once they start like diving into the patriarchy, it's harder to relate to them. And then just um, the moment where you learn about like objectification, and you start learning about the ickiness that kind of seeps into the world. Even though Barbie's not like a horror movie in any capacity, it's still reflective of these things. I think people within pink horror are taking those concepts and pushing it a bit further. You know, whether or not the main character is a victim or not, it's to their choosing. And I think that it's also a little bit more tongue in cheek than traditional horror that touches on some of these concepts of like gendered experiences, if that makes sense. But yeah, I found it really interesting, especially I think it's popular now because I mean, women have always had women. I say women as in inclusive of all feminine genders, but have traditionally been the people that drive the economic decisions of the households. I think that feminine people always tend to push trends online and are more likely to communicate effectively with others online. And so it makes sense for me for this to be like have such a strong reactions to products or movies or entertainment that really like amplify this sort of experience, or target this demographic. And it's not unique. Like, I mean, you see the trends kind of like hot girl summer, clean girl aesthetic, um, all this sorts of like trends that come and go to try to push products to help people express their femininity has been a thing forever. And then the opposite of that, the rebelliousness against that, like girl dinner or like the bimbofication trend, like all that was like a counterpoint of playing up your femininity as like a protest. So that's kind of like how I see pink horror, right? It's like the bimbofication of horror, which I'm here for. And I'm definitely not the only person that writes this. And again, like most of my short stories kind of fit this category. Whereas like my books are more like dark fantasy type things that don't necessarily hit on this. A lot of my short stories do in some capacity. So yeah, I enjoy this genre. I really recommend people try it for themselves. Um, just to like kind of get into it and experiment, and because I think it's going to be an up and coming thing. I do. If you look at the kind of trends that are going on, I think more feminine presenting people are being rebellious, and I think it'd be smart to capitalize on that rebellious energy through pink horror. But yeah, so that's my spiel. I wrote an article about this. It's up on LinkedIn actually, but I'm going to be putting it up on my website soon. I just have to get with my tech guy, aka hubby, and make him change my website to like include like a blog thing. So once that's up, I'll put the article up and I will put my website up so you guys can check it out. But basically this video is just like a summary of like what I wrote and what I've been thinking about for pink horror. But yeah, if you're interested in that, let me know, like the video, comment down below, share it with a friend, and subscribe to the channel. If this video gets more like interactions and stuff, I'll make more think pieces like this, or just kind of like share up and coming horror genres with you from the perspective of somebody who writes spooky stuff. Yeah, so thank you so much for watching, and until next time, thanks, bye!